power panel. Jake Huger, Francesca Fiorentini, Jordan Yule. The Twitchuation room's in the house or in the room. So's habituation in the room. So's a deep dive. Okay, so you're gonna check out deep dive in Twitchuation room on twitch.tv/TYT, of course. And of course, Habituation Room is in our podcasting network. Okay, so guys, we got a lot of show for you guys. Of course, as usual, in these days in America, lots of disasters. But we also have hilarious stories. You're gonna love the one on Rudy. What's he up to now? The Rudy Chronicles. Okay, anyways, Francesca, you got the news. Let's take it away.
Yeah, the Rudy Croc-canals. I'm sorry, I had to try to make that pun, and it didn't work, but it's okay. What's up, everybody? All right, let's get into our first story. The militia group, the Oath Keepers, is currently under fire because 9 of their members are facing seditious conspiracy charges for their role in the January 6th coup or attempted coup. And I think we all knew that, but we didn't know that their defense lawyers are taking a very interesting new tack. So check this out. Jurors are going to be told when the trial begins that the far-right extremists believed President Donald Trump would invoke the Insurrection Act as they gathered at the Capitol, 100 strong in their camo-colored tactical gear, and turn them into his own ultra-loyal federal militia. Now, that sounds nuts, but effectively the argument is if they become the president's militia, then you can't touch them. This is what they thought they were going to do. I don't know if it's gonna work on this jury, but it makes sense that the head of the Oath Keepers, which by the way, if you guys didn't know, is made up of current and former US military personnel from all different aspects of US military. So that is who they recruit, that is who they continue to recruit. But Elmer Rhodes, who's the head of it, said that day, do not concede, do not wait until January 20th, 2021, Inauguration Day, strike now. And he urged that in an open letter to Trump on December 14th, 2020, quote, "You must call us up and command us." Now, mind you, this is a week where we're finding out that Trump did want to go command the Oath Keepers and others from the Capitol itself. But okay, let's look at this legal strategy. So James Lee Bright, the lawyer for Rhodes, acknowledged that most people will be shocked to learn the Oath Keepers thought they'd become federal militia. They believed what? Bright imagined people thinking these guys are effing crazy. So that's a lawyer for the head of the Oath Keepers, trying to sort of like soften the blow that I think most people and will have, and the reaction that we will have, which is, what? They thought that? But I wanted to turn it over to you guys. Is this going to work on the jury?
Yeah, so guys, there's a couple of different issues here. One is the one Francesca mentioned about whether it's going to work. Is it a good legal defense? And the other is, did they actually believe it? Because even their own lawyer says it sounds nuts. So I want to tackle it one at a time. In terms of whether they actually believed it, absolutely is my answer. And I think it's hard for a lot of people that live in the rational world that we live in to understand that and to believe it. They think, no, they didn't really think that Trump was gonna come and go, you are now the militia. And you might go and grab your guns, and they literally thought this, and they admit this. You can now go get your guns that were stashed, not just the spears and the bear spray and all, and the nooses, that you already have those weapons. That's gonna come into the second part of the conversation. Go get more weapons and now start to kill the Democrats. And and people think there's no way they actually thought that. No, they did. They absolutely, positively did think that. It's in the recordings. They talk amongst each other. He's gonna do the Insurrection Act. And to be quote unquote fair to them, Trump has said on several occasions during his presidency that he would use the Insurrection Act in different contexts. And not necessarily to kill political opponents, but that he would use it to put, for example, to put down the George Floyd protests. So before we go on to whether it's gonna work as a legal defense, do we all agree to that these guys were genuinely nuts and actually believe this stuff?
Yeah, I wanted to give a little bit more context for that, Jordan, before I let you jump in. Let's just, because I think Cenk's right, and I think that the evidence bears it out. And so they have a little bit more to stand on other than like, we thought maybe he would, I don't know. Okay, so this is also from Insider. Reason one, they were invited security force for rally planners and participants on January 6th, including Roger Stone, Ali Alexander, remember he was one of the main organizers, Latinos for Trump, Virginia Women for Trump. Reason two, they were awaiting Trump's orders. That feels a little more vague to me, but the first one feels concrete. And the Insurrection Act, as we mentioned, this is graphic 6, is actually pretty broadly written. So it's so broadly written that leaving words like insurrection, militia, militias of the state without clear definition, Trump actually could have federalized the Oath Keepers. Rhodes lawyers will tell jurors it's so far-fetched and yet it's legal, at least until a court decides otherwise. Again, that is the lawyer for the Oath Keepers, but he might not be wrong in this case. Jordan, what are your thoughts?
I don't want to make any predictions about how this case is going to go because it's, especially the past couple of weeks, it just really underscores how bad our judicial system is in this country. So I'm just gonna hope and pray that we don't have a worst possible outcome. But what this really represents is just how close Trump and his administration was to just some of the most fringe aspects of our country. Like the groups they were closely linked to, the communication between a lot of these intermediaries, these kind of fringe figures, like you mentioned, Ali Alexander, and of course, James O'Keefe, which we just saw this week from Jason Leopold from BuzzFeed. He obtained documents that showed Mark Meadows was sharing James O'Keefe tweets with other members of the Trump administration. So like they're just totally all in on some of the worst actors in the conspiracy space. So it's not really a surprise that these people might have thought he could have activated them or were following his orders. And it really is another dark reminder, as we've seen throughout all of these hearings, just how close we were to things getting much more violent. We're very lucky it wasn't a lot worse. And a lot of people have said this is a trial balloon. And as we'll get to later in the show, there are things that really show that this could happen again and be much more effective and much more violent.
Yeah, so now as we transition to could this legal defense actually work, that's a different question. But in that bridge, I want to tell you what legal experts are right about and wrong about. They're right that the wording of that statute is very vague. It's from 1792, got updated in some ways in 1956, and the updates say that the president can't do that. And if you just declare some people militia, what are the rules? Do they have to follow the same military code? Do they not have to follow military code? But one of the experts, Joseph Nunn from the Brookings Center, the Brennan Center, which is a very legitimate place, but he said, quote, "There's no world in which it's remotely likely where the president of the United States would invoke the Insurrection Act and call on what is fundamentally just a social club of guys who have firearms." Joseph Nunn is incorrect. Not even remotely true. Trump definitely would have done that, was considering doing that. Okay, so now, having said that, can you just go into court and say, well, I thought Trump was gonna turn me into a violent mob that got to murder people? And the simple answer is no, you can't say that. Okay, so hey, I thought the vaguely worded statute allowed me to do political murder if the president told me to. It's not gonna work. First of all, the president didn't tell you to do it. To be fair to Trump, as far as we know at this moment, he certainly didn't order it on that day, and he might have considered it, and if he did, then that is very bad news for him because then he was planning a seditious conspiracy. But as far as we know, there was no orders given by Trump. You are now militia, go murder people, right? So the orders were not given. So that blows their defense completely. But the second line of their defense is, well, that's why we didn't go and get our guns and start killing everybody. That's why we only used the smaller weapons that we had. No, that's not a defense either. Okay, I remember my friends, I've told the story before to the members in a bonus episode, but my friends had gotten attacked by a bunch of guys in our hometown when we were younger. They actually went to court for assault charges. And the guy who attacked him said, "Oh no, that's not true, Your Honor. I didn't punch him in the face, I punched him in the stomach." No, that's still assault and you're still in a lot of trouble. And so saying, "Oh, I plan to do the seditious conspiracy even though Trump didn't order it, but I thought he was gonna order it. And I just speared the cops and smashed their heads against the wall, but I didn't actually use my AR-15 is not a great defense.
No, and whether or not it absolves anyone, if anything, it further impugns them, and it definitely shows that the president, even another piece of evidence that he knew there was gonna be violence, he knew there were armed people. And if you needed a reminder, let's just briefly take a look again at what this week revealed from the January 6 hearings. Cassidy Hutchinson, top aide to Mark Meadows, the chief of staff, who testified that Trump knew there was gonna be violence, and then, oh yeah, he knew the names of these militias. Take a look.
The president apparently wanted all attendees inside the official rally space and repeatedly said, quote, "They're not here to hurt me." And just to be clear, so he was told again in that conversation, or was he told again in that conversation that people couldn't come through the mags because they had weapons?
Correct.
And that people, his response was to say they can march to the Capitol from the ellipse.
Something to the effect of, "Take the effing mags away. They're not here to hurt me. Let them in. Let my people in. They can march to the Capitol after the rally's over. They can march from the ellipse. Take the effing mags away. Then they can march to the Capitol."
Right, and I want to follow that up immediately with this, showing that Trump did know the kinds of militias who were there that day.
Although Ms. Hutchinson has no detailed knowledge of any planning involving the Proud Boys for January 6th, she did note this.
I recall hearing the word Oath Keeper and hearing the word Proud Boys closer to the planning of the January 6th rally when Mr. Giuliani would be around.
I mean, if we needed more evidence that this presidency colluded very, very intimately with these far right extremist militias, there you go. It was effectively his security squad on that day. So I don't know if that's gonna exonerate them. It seems pretty weak, but it also just shows you the delusion under which they were operating on that day.
Yeah, so look, I think rather than exonerating them, it implicates Trump. It's
Right.
remember the charge is seditious conspiracy. Did they conspire together, work on a plan to commit sedition? And the Oath Keepers are saying, in essence, yes, we did. That's why we had our heavy weaponry stashed away in Arlington, Virginia. We were in our hotels. We were going to go grab them and come back. We had our light weapons on us. We were planning to be declared a militia. We thought that would make it legal. But you think that might make it legal, but your actions are still violent and illegal. And so, but if Trump said, yeah, get ready to do that, that doesn't mean that the Oath Keepers are innocent. It means Trump is guilty because he was part of that seditious conspiracy. And so, and guys, I will leave you on these two horrifying thoughts though. One of our members wrote in, Lou B, and we'd love to do the show with you guys, tyt.com/join to become a member. Lou B wrote in, this will go to the Supreme Court where all notions of reason or consistency go to die. And I was like, oh no, Lou makes a really good point. What if, I mean, they'll lose in the lower courts, even their lawyer says, I mean, I know it sounds nuts. And then when they ask him about the details of the law, he's like, well, I'll have to get back to you on that. We need a deep dive on that, if you will. But what if it goes to the Supreme Court and the Supreme Court's like, yeah, sounds pretty good to me. Insurrection Act, anytime the president wants, says, oh, those randos over there, go kill the Democrats.
Yeah.
Okay, I mean, it's unlikely, but it's now in this horrifying hellscape we live in, not impossible. Speaking of which, that leads me to my last number here. A poll just came out today. The question was, it may be necessary at some point soon for citizens to take up arms against the government. So how many people agree to that? 36% of Republicans say yes, it may soon be necessary to take up arms against the government. But it's not just, as you look at that graphic there, it's not just 36% of Republicans. At the end you see it's 35% of independents and 20% of Democrats agreeing. Among Americans who have guns in their homes, 37% agreed. So here we are waiting for a ticking time bomb where everyone, or at least a third of the country, feels like, yeah, I might have the right to go and let's finish the thought. What is taking up arms against the government? I might have the right to go and kill government officials, whether they're cops, they're military, or they're politicians. We have a third of the country planning to murder government officials as we speak. This is not going to end well. This is an absolute epic disaster in the making.
Yeah. Jordan, any final thoughts?
Well, I know you want to get to the next story, but that's just something that's been on my mind a lot, Cenk. So it's really frustrating to think that this is a sentiment that a lot of, especially Republicans, but some people across the board, are exploiting. Sometimes for personal or political expediency, but it's just really horrifying to think what that looks like in 5 to 10 years. The distrust of institutions, the crumbling infrastructure, these systemic problems that continue to keep people in bleak material conditions. What does that look like? And it's really devastating if you think about it. So that we're already there. We've got a third of Republicans saying that this is coming soon. I think that spells disaster.
Yeah. Some things you can't just vote harder on. Let's turn to this. Speaking of the hellscape we're in, Clarence Thomas continues to be a pube on America's Coke can. This time claiming that COVID-19 and its vaccine are made of aborted fetuses. It's got all the things. It's got all the things. Thomas made those remarks in a minority dissent after the Supreme Court refused to hear a case challenging New York's vaccine mandates based on religion for healthcare workers specifically, right? So this is a group of 16 doctors, nurses, and other healthcare workers brought the case, sued the US District Court for the Northern District of New York in an objection to the state's vaccine mandate on religious grounds. District Court issued a preliminary injunction, but the Second US Circuit Court of Appeals reversed it, and the Supreme Court ultimately declined to hear the challenge on Thursday. Thomas is real mad. He really wanted to stick this landing of a week from hell. So he wrote, "They object on religious grounds," referring to the healthcare workers, "to all available COVID-19 vaccines because they were developed using cell lines derived from aborted children." Okay, now it's unclear whether that is their religious objection. He might just be saying that. Now, I want to just say that does sound nuts, and it is nuts, and it's not actually true. But vaccine technology actually has relied on cells of fetuses. Incredible life-saving, if you want to be pro-life, life-saving science here. So this is from National Geographic, just explaining how it works. The cells are grown in a lab that were derived from a few elective abortions, that means choice abortions, performed more than 3 decades ago. The same cell lines are also used to test and advance understandings of several routine drugs, acetaminophen, ibuprofen, aspirin, and they continue to be used for treatment in such diseases as Alzheimer's and hypertension. So many people don't realize how important fetal cell lines are to develop life-saving medicines and vaccines that they rely on every day, says Amesh Ajala, an infectious disease expert at Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security. Their use and development of COVID-19 vaccines isn't anything different or special. So he's not wrong, but he's still crazy. And of course, this feeds into a broad anti-vax QAnon far-right logic and agenda. Before I can get to you guys, for some context, the Vatican itself, super pro COVID-19 vaccine, not pro-choice, pro COVID-19 vaccines. The Watchdog Office for Doctrinal Orthodoxy had said in 2020 that it was morally acceptable for Roman Catholics to get the jab after anti-abortion groups had raised concerns about vaccines. I want to get your guys' opinion. My personal thought is there's a lot of research that is done thanks to like this kind of technology, and like stem cell research is one of those things that the right freaked out about. And honestly, I'm like, no, this is a good thing. If you're gonna terminate a pregnancy, I would want to create a vaccine off of that.
Yeah.
I'm just be real.
Yeah, so I have a lot of strong opinions on this. I know you're shocked. I'm gonna get to research involving fetal cell lines. Quick summary of that for you is I love it. Oh my God, are you like allowed to love things that I object to religiously? Yes, I am. So you can suck it. We'll get back to that. And of course I'm right and you're wrong. If you're in that so-called pro-life position, in fact, this shows you how wrong you are. So let me explain the facts. So Francesca's right. The original in the production, but this is very important, guys. In the production of the vaccine in the first place, they use fetal cell lines that's not actually from the aborted fetuses. It is in a laboratory that they create those, but they created them in the beginning, all the way back in the 1970s and 80s, from voluntarily aborted fetuses back then. Okay, but the new ones that they are creating are just in a lab. They're not going and getting new fetuses or whatever along those lines, right? But much more importantly, the vaccines themselves, see, when they hear stuff like this, the right wing thinks, oh, the vaccine's filled with aborted fetuses. No, it's the vaccine itself has none of that, none of that. As they were doing the research for the vaccine, they used fetal cell lines created in a lab. Okay, so just be clear on it. Now, some people, the reason why Francesca says Clarence Thomas isn't totally wrong is some people do object to that religiously. They go, no, I don't care. I don't care that the vaccine doesn't have it. I don't care that these cell lines were created in labs. The origin of those cell lines back in the 1970s, et cetera, right? Okay, well then, do you really have a pro-life position? Do you realize how counterproductive that argument is to your so-called pro-life position? You say, well, I don't want any abortions because they might use aborted fetuses to create vaccines that save millions of lives. And you're pro-life? The vaccines so far, in a recent survey that I saw, or study that I saw, have saved over 2 million lives. 2 million lives. And religious nut jobs, zealots, fundamentalists, American Taliban go and say, we shouldn't have saved those lives because I'm pro-life. Well, no, you're not pro-life. You're a lunatic who doesn't understand science. And finally, that gets me to using fetal cell lines. I love it. Are you like, so I'm not supposed to use science when someone chose to have an abortion 40, 50 years ago? I'm not supposed to use that to create something in a lab that saves millions of lives? No, I refuse to be an idiot, okay? And you say, well, I have religious objections. Well, good news, we don't live in a Christian nation. We are not ruled by the American Taliban. We actually live in a secular country. It was the first secular country on earth. We are known, we are the core of our country, and the Constitution is that we are secular and not guided by any religion so that we can save millions of lives when science finds a way to do that, instead of somebody going, oh no, man, I don't, the invisible man told me I don't like it, okay? That's not even true. Read the goddamn Bible. Numbers 11 through 31. God is definitely pro-abortion. And if you think your wife cheated on you, God will perform the abortion for you. Read the Bible, stop being so ignorant. And besides which, even if you disagree with me on the Bible, I don't care. We don't live in a Christian country.
Yeah.
We live in a country that is secular and supposed to be guided by all of us deciding in a democracy based on reason and logic. I know you hate that idea. You hate logic if you're pro-life. You despise it. And you're like, no, I want the invisible rules of the invisible man that he whispered into my ear or into a rabbi's ear 2,500 years ago. And I totally misinterpret the thing that he whispered it 2,500 years ago, but I don't care. I don't want you to save those lives. No deal, no deal. We're gonna go save those lines. And if we use fetal cell lines, that's fantastic. Jordan.
Yeah, really quickly, I just want to say, those healthcare workers did resign. They had every right to, but the hospitals they were working on also had a right to actually impose a vaccine mandate. They're healthcare workers. Jordan, I'm surprised though that they didn't take up this case. And maybe I could get your thoughts on them like passing this one over.
I don't know. I think I kind of want to bring it back to the Clarence Thomas thing specifically, because I do think like I'm listening. It's great. It's great to watch the show happen. It's a reminder of how like horrifying it is that Ginny Thomas and Clarence Thomas are such powerful people in Washington. I think you were being very generous in your deference to him. Like, oh, well, he's kind of right. Like, well, not this vaccine specifically from what I understand. But it's also just like, it's a dark reminder that she has been pushing these conspiracy theories and has been such a major player in like the fringe right-wing world that I can't help but think that there was some overlap there, and why even like focusing on that in his opinion. I'm really, really disturbed that she's still a figure and he's not removed from the court. He has no business being on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, if you don't think we should save millions of lives, the government should not save millions of lives because of fetal cell lines. Yeah, I think you're totally nuts. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I think Clarence Thomas belongs in a mental asylum way more than he belongs on the Supreme Court. Let me be perfectly clear about that. But let me enrage the so-called pro-life people one more time. Of course, they're anti-life. They would kill everything and anything in their way as long as they think Yahweh wants it, or some stupid evangelical preacher that has nothing to do with God, that has tricked them and robbed them of all their money. They'll listen to him rather than scientists and doctors. But guys, for me, abortion, to me, it's like knee surgery. They're like, a lot of people are like, oh no. How can you think that? That's so wrong. That's what I think. It's not at all wrong. I am far more correct scientifically, empirically, logically, humanely, morally. So again, we are not forced into having your opinions. I know right-wingers hate that. They hate the idea of freedom. They think that everyone should be ruled by the demons inside their heads. No deal. It's called America. We all get to have our opinions and then we vote. That's how it works.
I think we have to take a break, Mr. Uger.
Yeah, indeed. All right, when we come back, more craziness. Yes, there's more rage, but also later in the program, we lighten it up because the right wing losing their minds is sometimes horrific, as you've seen in this segment, and sometimes it's hilarious. All right, we'll be back. All right, back on the break here. This is amazing. James Ramsey, thank you for the super chat. Philip Mead has the amazing super chat point. There's never been a major civil war in a nuclear armed nation. We have to avoid one at all costs. Yeah, Philip, that I have to confess never occurred to me. Oh my God. Oh my God. Okay, yes, we have to avoid one. Daniel Sanchez says, despair leads to violence. Republicans respond not to facts but feelings. They respond to fear and protection. Trump made them feel that. Get it? Yes, 100%. Remember, if you want to understand a conservative, just be afraid of everything and you'll understand their mindset perfectly. Like immigrants, okay, oh, the Democrats, everything is That's a conservative in one meme, okay? So then you'll go, oh, I get it. When he says Biden is gonna do this and he's working with the communists or whatever, they're like, oh, let's go kill him, right? It's so easy to trigger right wingers. That's why guys like Trump are super dangerous. Okay, Jonathan Boros-Johnny says, what if a right-wing extremist wins and refuses to leave? Like the election count takes 1 hour and is declared winner by 100%. Would we take up arms? I know, Jonathan, that's a great question. And that's a really dangerous question. So we're in unprecedented, insane times, guys. I don't mean to scare you, but it's real. James Thompson says, if any were active duty regarding the people that were working with the Oath Keepers, etc., their CEOs needed in on this militia. So good point there. Chaplain Fred's back and he said, happy Friday, Cenk, and the Power Panel team today. I love you, Cenk, for keeping me sane and informed. Now that I'm back, I'm like, wait, what? The US is so far deep the rabbit hole, God help us. Indeed, and maybe you could pray for us, Chaplain. We appreciate it. And then Eclectic Mrs. Democracy wrote a good question in the member section. Cenk, you've been in this show for 20+ years now. Would you say this has been the single worst week of news that you and TYT have ever had to cover? Well, guys, it is. It's when we had sanity and then we started to slip into insanity, and that started with Bush and Cheney and starting a war for no reason, starting torture for no reason, the warrantless wiretapping. But now we're all the way down the rabbit hole where we're worried to death about actually maintaining democracy, fascists actually taking over in America, and them using actual political violence. This is as bad as it gets. All right, we'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Francesca, Jordan, and Danny with you guys. Danny Nernick just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. We appreciate it. All of you can do likewise. Come help us do real news, truthful news, be honest with everybody. You guys make that possible, and you get all of our shows anytime you want when you sign up. If you're not on YouTube, tyt.com/join. Francesca.
All right, so we all know that the GOP has iced out Representative Liz Cheney for just upholding democracy. And now all eyes are on her seat in Wyoming and the primary on August 16th. And there are 4 other GOP candidates who are going against her, challenging her, of course, from the right. And they had a debate the other night, and we can all see that they are quite formidable idiots. And look, I'm not trying to sing Liz Cheney's praises, but you all need to get a load of what happened. So just for a smattering of commentary, we had businesswoman Robin Belensky. There's Harriet Hagemuth, who is endorsed by Donald Trump. And they decided to both weigh in on election integrity and relying on just rock solid evidence. Take a look.
I understand when I talked to Mike Lindell, he did say that there was a small portion of voter fraud in this state, but that is alarming anyway.
What I think that you see in terms of the election integrity issues are what we've seen more on the national level that has a lot of people concerned, including me. The 2000 Mules movie is something that I think we have great concern about in terms of the use of the drop boxes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I've got to do a donkey noise. That's Harriet Hageman referencing Dinesh D'Souza's very self-funded documentary project. They also wanted to give a state senator, Anthony Bouchard, state senator, okay, maybe we're working with something real here. He had a lot to say about the election and the internets.
That elections are always square. We know in several states they use COVID, they use the ballot process. What about Facebook using the system to steer people? We know for a fact all the major internets do that.
All of them, every single Facebooks. Let's just juxtapose that with Liz Cheney giving her answer to questions about the 2020 election and election security.
The claims that Mrs. Hageman is making about the 2020 election are the same claims for which the president's lead lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, was disbarred. They are the same claims for which Sidney Powell has had her law license suspended. I won't say something that I know is wrong simply to earn the votes of people, to earn political support. So I'm asking for your vote, and I'm asking you to understand that I will never violate my oath of office. And if you're looking for somebody who will, then you need to vote for somebody else on this stage, because I won't. I will always put my oath first.
Ooh, okay, Liz. Okay, sticking it to the voters. What do you all make of her strategy? Very much not backing down from the fact that she's gonna call Trump out. She's one of the people leading this January 6th hearing, and she's not about to water it down for her voters.
So there's two huge parts of this story, okay? So first is, can someone stick to the truth in the Republican Party and win? Can they stick to their guns and be super strong and win? Because if you run mealy mouth and you half jump off that cliff, there's no way you're gonna win. But that's not what Liz Cheney's doing. She's saying, no, this is true, this is not true. And even if you're under the cult of Trump, I don't care, I'm gonna tell you, be honest, okay? And that's, I mean, I despise the Cheney family. I disagree with her on every other issue. I think she's dangerous in the wars that she starts, etc. But if she loses, that means no Republican can dare tell the truth to their voters, because they will definitely be eliminated, okay? And that is dangerous. But I think the second part's more dangerous. But first, let me fill you in on how it's going. Cheney right now is losing 56 to 28. She's losing by nearly 30 points. So the lady there talking about, oh no, I don't know, 2,000 mules, I don't know, right? She's winning by nearly 30 points. Cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, right? And then the other guy who was worried about all the internets, he's sitting at like 12 points. He's kind of closing in on Cheney. So that leads to the second point, guys, and I'm curious about your take on all this. I watched a longer clip of that debate, and I know the Cheney team put it together, and so they took the worst parts of the other guys, etc. But even so, it was unbelievable how incompetent and absurd and idiotic the other candidates were. But we look at that debate, and she looks at that debate, and she publicizes it, saying, "Look, I'm obviously the only one with more than 7 IQ points on this debate stage, right?" But the Republican primary voters generally look at that and go, yeah, they nailed it. The Looney Tunes guys nailed it. I think they're so smart. I think they're so right. Can you believe how ridiculous Liz Cheney's being? How do we live in a world where we think each other is nuts? I mean, how can you look at those other idiots talking about the internets and mules and think that they have it figured out? Well, that's what Republicans in Wisconsin think right now as things stand.
Yeah, Jordan?
Yeah, it shows how crazy the Republican Party has gotten, that Liz Cheney is the voice of reason there. And I would discourage people from celebrating her, as I've seen some pundits in mainstream media do, as like a good exemplary Republican. I need to remind a lot of people, she doesn't believe climate change is real. She's anti-choice. She cheered on Trump's tax cuts. Like Cenk said, she's a war hawk. Across the board, she is horrible. She just cleared a bar that is literally on the floor to say, okay, yeah, that's how the election turned out. She's just acknowledging an objective truth, and that's it. Sure, she's done an okay job in the January 6th hearings, but that she's the voice of reason there is really sad. And the thing is, it goes beyond her state, there's a ton of people like this in Arizona. There's definitely people in, we've got some in Colorado, and you got some in the Carolinas, in Georgia, in the South. They're popping up more and more because it seems to be a viable political path for people. Just appeal to these conspiracy theories, pander to the Facebook boomer conservative brain, push things aren't true because it's sensational and it might get traction on the internet, and you just hoodwink a lot of people into voting for you by lying to them. Politicians lie, but this is just a new type of lying. It's horrifying.
Yeah. Speaking of people running out of juice and anyone who will run for office, I have to play this Robin Belinsky part of the debate. Just my favorite. She's not a front runner. That's Hageman, again endorsed by Trump. But here's Robin, just a gem. Look at this soundbite.
January 6th
was a setup from the beginning. We cannot have actual, oh gosh. Anyway.
Nice save, Robin. Anyway, show a picture of your car, quick. Here's my website. This is the car that I drive. Hell yeah, saved.
I'm surprised he's not
Saved,
leading.
girl. So this is the alternative, and like I totally hear you on Liz Cheney. I'm very torn because as someone sitting on the sidelines who is not living in a state where I would even switch parties in order to vote in the other primary, I'm like, I don't know. That's y'all's mess. And these Republican super PACs that are trying to back Cheney, some even Democrat-led, I'm like, I don't care about where you put your money. Sure, try and save her. Let's see if you do.
Yeah, but at this point, though, it is a scary proposition that if a Republican says that 2 + 2 = 4, that might mean that they're going to automatically lose their primary.
Right.
Like, no truth is allowed in the Republican Party. The Republican voters actively hate it. They're like, oh, you tell me the vaccines work, which 99% of the world's doctors and scientists agree to, then I hate you and I'm gonna vote against you. I don't wanna hear the truth. I wanna hear maniacal, lunatic conspiracy theories. And if you don't give them to me, I'm not gonna vote for you. That's why Cheney's down by 28 points as we stand.
I wish there was a way they could all lose, but I'm also really distracted by that car and really want to know what the base model is. It looks like a late '90s Chevy Cavalier, which is just classic. That's incredible. This is such a beautiful ride.
Businesswoman.
See, we're fair. We're libs, but we like the ride. Okay, and if that was her #1 issue, oh my God, I'd be so relieved. I'd be like, yes, well, by all means, do whatever you want with your car. It's a free country, okay? But what you did with your mind, that's another issue.
I think we need another break.
Yep.
I've been told.
Yes, another break, more madness when we return. Let's go to Twitch first. Darth Zimby gifted 2 subs. So did Rialan. DaddyGamer74 said, when is Jen going to take the deep 9? I'm supposed to ask about what this is.
You haven't done that yet?
No.
You have to ask. You can't afford it.
Okay. I'm happy to not take the deep 9, however I wind up taking it. Okay, so if you say, if I have to ask, I don't want, okay, good. I don't want to know. All right, we'll tackle that another day apparently. KX5 says, cooking my first Blue Apron meal today. Thanks, TYT. That's awesome, we love it. I hope you got in on the Blue Apron deal while you could. We gave away hundreds, actually over 1,000 cards that were all worth $100. Free $100 in food. So that was for our members. We'll see if we do it again. So stay right here. But for now, this week there is none. Warhammer, so next time, jump on it. Warhammer Dragon says, sup Jenk, Jorbs, and Franny Fio. Just wondering why there isn't any national referendum in the USA, and if you think they would be helpful in situations like Roe v. Wade, I think it would put a lot of pressure on politicians to act. Your thoughts? Well, I don't like the referendums where they then make it super complicated and then they spend gazillions of dollars trying to trick people into voting the wrong way, etc. But some national referendums would be super helpful because our politicians are well over 90% corrupt at the national level. And I don't mean it as hyperbole. I mean, they take bribes and they do what the bribers want them to do. They're totally corrupt, and a national referendum would help us get around it, but alas, it doesn't exist. And then one more person on Twitch says, Jordan looks like cute. I don't like saying nice things, but man's cute.
That was Brett. I think Brett said that.
I know, that's why I said it. A person on Twitch. I was gonna get you excited and then reveal that it was Brett Ehrlich, but there you go. You're already excited.
You're like, oh.
Yeah, not so much anymore.
Nah, yeah. All right, back to our members. Don't shoot up. The goalkeeper says, okay. Oh, this is a kick-ass power panel. Thank you. Strategic Diversity Dragon says, this sounds nuts, quotes, but not worse than the other BS. I mean, everything's nuts these days, so you're right. Little Mac McGee says, I'll give GOP credit for one thing. They at least have real primaries. Well, that's definitely true. And they don't discourage primaries, unlike the idiot Democrats who are like, we don't want extra media attention. That might help the winner win the general election. Don't do that. And then it might make the party healthier by getting rid of old fossils who are 100% corrupt. Don't. And of course, the media loves the corruption, so they help the Democrats lie about primaries. So good point. And Veda Del Set says Liz Cheney is going to be a beloved Democrat this time next year. I'm worried that you might be right. Don't let her do that. We'll be back. Back on TYT, Cenk, Francesca, and Jordan with you guys. Also Alex Ramsey, Andrew Snell, and Jeffrey Guth. You guys are all awesome. Thank you for joining. They did that by hitting the join button below the video on YouTube, and you could do it by going to tyt.com/join. Let's go try to create some positive change in the world. All right, Francesca, news back to you.
Yeah, so if you've ever used Planned Parenthood for abortion resources, PlannedParenthood.com, your data might have been accessed by a third-party company. Planned Parenthood did just this week end any practices that allowed for market data research or an access to any of its data. So rest assured that's ending now, but the alarm bells were going off for a while, and it is not a good week to have third-party companies accessing data of people seeking abortions, obviously. It was probably never a good idea in the first place. Now we know this because there was an investigation by Lockdown Privacy, which is an app that stops that kind of tracking, and they detailed that Planned Parenthood, for example, was sharing this kind of information with Google, TikTok, Hotjar, things like an IP address, a site visited, behavior on the site, reason for visiting, user selected method of abortion, the time zone, your zip code, time stamp, whether you came to Planned Parenthood through a search engine or you typed it in directly, client ID. I mean, honestly, all stuff that on a regular day surfing the internet, let's be real, most of us are getting our data tracked around. Now, this is just another reason why we need protections as citizens, as people who use the internet, as people who want autonomy over our own bodies. But Lockdown Privacy said, and this was from the founder, says it was shocking. We analyzed and reviewed the tracking behaviors of hundreds of apps and websites. It's rare to see this degree of carelessness with sensitive health data. Let's give Planned Parenthood a chance to weigh in. So this is, let's jump to graphic 4. They said, let's be clear. No scheduling or protected health information, PHI, has been breached. Out of an abundance of caution, Planned Parenthood will suspend marketing pixels on web pages related to abortion searches and will be engaging with Meta/Facebook and other technology companies about how their policies can better protect people seeking abortion care. Now, I just want to remind everyone that this is also a week that Meta and Facebook have been scrubbing the posts of organizations like Planned Parenthood, organizations that are trying to either raise money for or get resources on how to still obtain an abortion, how to get the Plan C pill sent to you if you live in a state where abortion's been banned. Those have been scrubbed. And a lot of that has to do with, God, who knows, but them trying to avoid any kind of liability if they are at the other receiving end of a lawsuit, because they don't have the money. They're just Meta and Google. But I wanted to get you guys' initial thoughts before I give you sort of like why this matters, why this is so important.
Yeah, so there's as usual a couple of issues here. First, HIPAA is a law that's supposed to protect your medical privacy. So if they go to Planned Parenthood without a court order and they say, all right, give me their medical files, Planned Parenthood can say no. Even with a court order, they might be able to say no. It's a little bit complicated, that particular law, but it's pretty strong protections. But if you're going to Planned Parenthood's website or any other website and they have these trackers that almost all the sites have, then other people can then get around HIPAA and just grab that information from the third parties because of the way that the internet works. And so that is not protected by HIPAA. That is why this is an issue. But it's an issue only because we now live in, well, at least some of us do, in fascist states. So where they would say, oh, what is a woman doing? Oh, she's going to do something to her own body we don't want her to have that freedom. The state now owns their body and will tell them what to do with it. Oh my God, we found a way to track them so we could track their every movement. And then if we think they're doing something to their body that the government, the tyrannical government has decided they're not allowed to do to their body, we'll snatch them up, put them in jail, and make sure we take their freedom away for good. None of this would ever be an issue if the right wing wasn't fascist to begin with and trying to take away women's freedoms and literally use their bodies for government purpose.
Yeah.
In 2015, Julia Angwin published a book called Dragnet Nation. And in it, I mean, this was several years ago now, she warned about future problems with mass data collection in the private sector because Congress, as you all know and viewers all know, is very slow to catch up with developing technology. And they often don't understand it. I would say a majority of Congress doesn't understand most social media platforms in general, let alone the data collection behind it. But she talked about as it intersects with health data, it's totally different because you can just apply a couple different layers of data from different data brokers and you can find out exactly who that person is online. And I checked to see if she had written about anything in this world, and she has recently, so I'd encourage people to read it, but she said there are anti-choice groups geofencing clinics like Planned Parenthood clinics and other abortion clinics and targeting people in those clinics with false information and ads trying to dissuade them from exercising their own bodily autonomy. That is such an invasive tactic for a deeply personal decision. And again, Congress could regulate how companies can access your health data and how they can sell it and deal with it and whatever. But the problem is they don't understand it. We have a really slow, archaic Congress.
And to speak to both of those points, the idea that this is a right-wing tactic and the idea that Congress doesn't know what they're talking about when it comes to the internet, I wanted to point you guys to a little bit more information. So the National Right to Life Committee has released model legislation that criminalizes providing or hosting information or assistance on how to get a medical abortion. It specifically says that anti-choice laws must be written to prevent state residents from seeking abortions in states where it is legal to do so, and this law is likely to pass in several states. In other words, we're going to put the clamp down on the information spreading, which happens through the internet. Anyone utilizing that information, putting in their own information in order to prevent people from traveling to states where abortion is still legal. And again, we know that this is something the Biden administration, the one thing that they're trying to combat against is protecting the right of people to travel. But it speaks to, and let's jump down to graphic 7, about the ways that we misunderstand Section 230, which has been used. It is really the last line of defense, according to this article, in keeping reproductive health care support information and fundraising online that does not provide immunity if the platform develops or creates content, and it does not provide immunity from the enforcement of federal criminal laws, but crucially, it does protect against criminal liability from state laws. Okay, so that was a little muddled, but the idea is it is something that even Democrats have taken aim at because they believe, for example, in the FOSTA-SESTA bill that was trying to combat human trafficking, supposedly, that because these sites were hosting back pages or ads for escorts, that they were contributing to trafficking of minors, et cetera, and human trafficking. So that's why we need to get rid of Section 230 to hold the platforms accountable. But no, in fact, people, including sex workers, and now you see in reproductive health, they're like, no, Section 230 is super critical because that way the platforms like Google, like Facebook, they don't face lawsuits. They can say, look, this is people spreading information about healthcare, and you can't come after us. States can't criminalize us for hosting this kind of information, and we then don't have this sort of ridiculous thing to rest on when we scrub posts as they're doing right now.
Yeah, look, I know Section 230 sounds arcane. You're like literally referring to a very specific section in a giant bill, but it's super important. It means that any website, if you take it away, will be liable for anything that any of their users say. So if someone on Facebook, on gigantic Facebook, puts up a post saying, hey, this is where you can get an abortion or you can get an abortion pill, they can say, nope, that's it, it's Facebook's fault. Now Facebook owes the state of Texas billions of dollars. Well, what's Facebook gonna do? Or any website. They're gonna say, no, that's it, clamp down. We're not going to have any information that could help people because the red states have made it criminal to help people. So we're gonna end all user comments. It would destroy the internet. And there's honestly a bunch of total idiot Democrats in several different laws who are trying to take away some of the protection of Section 230. Idiots, don't do that. You'll destroy the internet if you do that. Now back to Republicans. So understand what they're doing. They're now using the internet to spy in on every part of your life, trying to catch if you did something with your own body that the government doesn't want. I mean, you want to talk about the tyranny of government? The right wing is constantly talking about, oh, if a government tyranny comes, man, I'm gonna murder everybody. What are you talking about? You are government tyranny. And get a load of these fascists who say, oh, if you made the mistake of ever living in a red state, we're gonna track you no matter where you go. We're gonna track you in other states, we're gonna track you in other countries, and we're gonna imprison you because you made the terrible mistake of living in a red state. And we're just gonna make sure that you could never exercise freedom over your own body. It's disgusting.
Because we believe in small government.
Yeah, small government, my ass. All of you Republicans admit right now that you love big government. You love it. Even if you don't think it's tyrannical. You're like, no, I have to protect zygotes. Zygotes are the most important people that aren't people. Okay, fine. But you can't say that it isn't big government to say you can't decide what to do with your body. The government, giant government, decides what to do with your body, and we track you down if you ever disagree with the government and put you in jail if you ever dare to try to go to a state that has freedom.
Yeah.
I think Fran's point about Sesta Fosta is a good one. And I want to remind people that only one Democrat in the Senate voted against it, and that was Ron Wyden. And he's pretty good on tech bills because he hired somebody who used to be at the ACLU who is just a technologist. That's his entire life, is just thinking about these things critically. Christopher Soghoian, who I admire and respect greatly, just has advised him on all of these bills, so he's making smart votes. No other Democrat voted no on it, and that, like Fran said, it pushed sex workers into much more unsafe situations because they couldn't vet their clients anymore. So however you feel about sex work in general, we don't want people to be in danger because of a dumb move by Congress. But that's the consequence of not having people who understand what they're dealing with legislating on these issues.
Yeah, I have to bring in two more pieces of context before we leave this story. Just so you guys know, the Department of Health and Human Services this week did issue a statement sort of clarifying that, and Cenk alluded to this earlier, but in the absence of a mandate enforceable in a court of law, and in the absence of sort of basically a court order to get your medical records, the privacy rules permission to disclose protected health information for law enforcement purposes does not permit the disclosure to law enforcement where a hospital or other healthcare provider's workforce member chose to report an individual's abortion or other reproductive healthcare. So there's no requirement from healthcare workers to report an abortion or alleged abortion. So they clarified that. Sadly, they also clarified something else, and this is what we're talking about. We're talking about internet data, we're talking about our privacy. The department warned patients that data collected by third-party apps, such as period trackers, such as potentially Planned Parenthood, is not protected health information under federal rules and could be shared with other entities. Guys, I'm pregnant right now. I have Flow. It's an app you like track the baby. You're like, the baby is big as a corn on the cob or something stupid like that. And I'm terrified where you're like, these are apps that regularly feed third-party entities all of your data. So of course I'm not gonna use it anymore, as cute as that is, to know that, this is the size of a corn on the cob.
No, I gotta say one last thing here. Francesca and anyone else who's pregnant, do not travel to a red state. And because Franny's planning to have the baby, and that's a great choice. But what if something goes wrong? What if you have health complications later, and you have to take some normal medical procedure? If you went through a red state, they could track you through the apps, and then potentially look to imprison you because you made the disastrous decision to step foot in a fascist state that doesn't allow you to control your own body.
Yeah.
No, these are super scary times.
Yes, very much so. Everyone donate to abortionfunds.org, please.
Yeah.
There's a fundraiser happening tomorrow. Adiana Vega's friend of ours and TYT's is doing a fundraiser for the Texas Equal Access Fund. If you go to protectabortionrights.com, you can donate now.
Nice.
All right, excellent. All right, everybody check out Jordan Eula on Deep Dive and Francesca on Twitchuation Room and also Bituation Room. Bituation Room's in our podcasting network, and Twitchuation Room and Deep Dive are in our Twitch network. That's twitch.tv/TYT. Thank you so much, guys. Appreciate it. And when we come back, we'll make lighter fun of the right wing, including what Rudy's selling to try to pay for his legal defense. It's hilarious. We'll be right back.
Our system is inherently rigged against the will of the people.
They have 50% of the vote, and in a democracy, they should have 50% of the seats.
But if you live in an insanely gerrymandered district, your vote functionally doesn't matter.
We drew the map in a way that even though we get 50% of the vote, we're gonna get 13 out of the 18 seats.
You don't actually have the ability to translate the will of the voters in your area into actual government policy.
They should not be allowed to gerrymander these districts. We should actually have a democracy.
Been honest with him. Like, like, yeah, I was upset with you and I shouldn't have done it. But instead I was like, I'm just trying to protect my engagement ring.
At TYT, our mission is to boldly pursue truth, challenge the establishment, and drive positive change. At a time when corporate capture of our media, our government, and our politics is nearly absolute, everyday working people need a champion to fight for them and to push back against the powerful interests that threaten our democracy itself. At TYT, we're proudly progressive and call out corruption and duplicity wherever we see it, from Republicans, Democrats, or anyone else. And unlike mainstream news media outlets, we're not beholden to corporate advertisers, to defense contractors, to Wall Street, or to Big Pharma. We only have to answer to our audience, and for nearly 2 decades, we've accomplished that by delivering honest, timely, and insightful perspectives on the day's news without fear or favor, or concern for whose toes we might step on, or which powerful elites we might offend. And while we're super serious about the news, we also manage to do it in a way that is fun and lighthearted. We can do this together and serve our audience, and yes, have fun doing it.
Indisputable has been named the fastest growing news TV show in the United States of America, compared to all shows on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and roughly 30 others. What do we do on this show? We tell the truth. You know why we tell the truth? Because the truth is simply indisputable. Donald Trump radicalized citizens. He's the chief terrorist. Republicans still want you to think that critical race theory is the greatest evil that can happen in K through 12 education. It's not even taught. I guarantee you this, David. If he would have taken a knee during the national anthem to bring awareness to the need for more money for cancer research in America, he would not have had that response. It was the fact that he took a knee for black folk and brown folk. You rather pick the voters because you're scared of the voters picking the politicians. It frightens you. But we coming. When you are in a privileged position, equality looks like oppression to you. The Karenicity runs deep in this one. We provide a mirror for reflection and a mirror for correction.
So what if I have 35? Don't hit me. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
So let's put up the graphic of this Karen in peak performance. Boom. They want anarchy so they can start creating their own rules.
Can you share with me some examples?
When they were running around during the terrorist attack on January 6th saying, hang Mike Pence. So those are the people I'm talking about. That's a problem, correct? You work for Mike Pence, stand up for the guy. Do not allow the ideology of politics to evaporate the humanity that still exists inside of you. They don't stop, I don't stop. Racism won't stop, I won't stop. Systemic bias won't stop, so I won't stop. People still need health care, so I won't stop. People still need criminal justice systems reformed in this country, so I won't stop. And you won't stop either.
Drop it. Power panel. Cenk Uygur, Caroline Johnson coming over from Rebel headquarters. And J.R. Jackson, of course, host of the Watch List. Great to have you all here. Caroline, how you doing?
Oh, just awesome. You know, things are so good these days, so no complaints.
Okay, well, I hope that's true in your personal life, but obviously in politics, not remotely true. As you're about to see in the first story, which JR has.
Let's do that. Texas has a group of educators that are trying to influence upcoming historical lessons in ways that I think you might be able to guess how this is going. They want to talk about slavery, but there's a new term that they want to use. I'm gonna get to that in a second. Let's go straight into the details here. So a group of Texas educators have proposed to the Texas State Board of Education that slavery should be taught as involuntary relocation during second grade social studies instruction. During second grade, the group's proposing these second grade curriculum revisions was given a copy of a Senate Bill 3, Texas's law that dictates how slavery and issues of race are taught in Texas. The law states that slavery can't be taught as part of the true founding of the United States, and that slavery was nothing more than a deviation from American values. Part of the proposed draft standards here, obtained by the Texas Tribune, say that students should quote, compare journeys to America, including voluntary Irish immigration and involuntary relocation of African people during colonial times. Again, second grade education. They're supposed to be teaching young folks about this as the basis for how they understand how this country was built. More, because the suggested language here, it surfaced late. It's from its June 15th meeting that they had, and it lasted more than 12 hours. Luckily, there was some pushback from the folks that were getting told this ridiculousness, and this is what happened here. Board member Aisha Davis, a Democrat who represents Dallas and Fort Worth, raised concerns during this June 15th meeting that the term wasn't a fair representation of the slave trade. The board sent the draft back for revision, urging that the educator group to carefully examine the language used to describe events. I'm sure that was the very nice way that they'd say, take this garbage back and give us something that makes sense. So more, I can't say what their intention was, but that's not going to be acceptable, is what Aisha said. But they're not done with this whole thing yet. The working group of 9 educators that did this is one of many such groups that's advising the state education board to make curriculum changes. Now this summer, the board will consider updates to social studies instruction a year after lawmakers passed a law to keep topics that make students feel discomfort, that's the quote, feel discomfort out of their Texas classrooms. And also, the once a decade process updates what children learn in the state's nearly 8,900 public schools, but the board is considering curriculum changes 1 year after Texas passed a law to eliminate topics from schools that make students feel discomfort. Okay, so they usually do this nearly a decade a time, in gaps of time. But because there's this new law saying, hey, we have to make sure that we change the way that we talk about enslaved people in this country and how this whole country came together. We need to do this right away. Very similar to when they're looking to protect people in the country that they deem more important than the rest of the citizens. They're really quick to do these types of things when they really want to. It actually tells you how fast that things can actually work when people are motivated.
Well, of course, and Republicans move 1,000 times faster than Democrats. So if they're going to take away your freedom or your education or anything like that, they'll do it in a second. Democrats will get around to it, to reversing it in approximately 180 years. So look, they've got all sorts of fake words that have cleaned up versions of reality. So you remember Dick Cheney did enhanced interrogation. So how was it enhanced? It was enhanced by doing torture. That's what it was, and they just put a slightly more technical term on it to clean it up. And now slavery is apparently involuntary relocation. Well, okay, involuntary doesn't sound too good, but hey, you're relocating. That's bad, but well, if it's not that bad, you guys mind if we involuntarily relocate you, right wingers? Oh, did we forget the part about the whippings and the lynchings and the murders and the rapes and the taking away of your kids and treating you as property and making you do all the work? Oh, you wanted to leave that out? Why? Because you want to lie about history. Why? Because you still kind of like it. So now that's the part that they're gonna say, oh no, that's not true. Really? I hated slavery. I don't mind teaching it because I think it was terrible. We should never do it again. Why would I mind teaching that? You mind teaching it. Why do you mind teaching it? Think about it. You mind it because you think, oh, that was us, that was me. I don't know, you're weirdly self-defensive about it. Look, hey, red state idiots. If you're white, it doesn't mean you did it. That's not what it means. Okay, look, I'm Turkish here, maybe this could help relate. Turks had a giant empire, did a lot of terrible things, okay? I didn't do it. And it doesn't mean I go and say, oh, don't ever teach it. No, teach it. Teach things like, by the way, the Armenian genocide that a Turkish empire did. It doesn't make any sense to erase history. When you say, no, don't do it, don't teach it, don't. That basically means like, was it so bad? Yes, it was so bad. And yes, there's no harm in teaching actual history unless you think it wasn't so bad. Caroline.
Yeah, I think honing in on this sentence is really raising a lot of different things for me, because going back it says, yeah, involuntary relocation of African people during colonial times. So obviously, there's the big problem is the euphemism here for slavery, which is very much on par with like Nazi level propaganda. But then also this during colonial times is really interesting, because that, they're trying to say that the slave trade was only happened during colonial times, like therefore before the nation of the United States was created, before the Constitution. And that's also not true. The slave trade continued 18, 20 years into the founding of the nation. And so, they're doing two things in this statement. They're obviously teaching children a different euphemism when slavery more than covers it, and also is more like second graders are way more able to understand the concept of slavery than involuntary relocation. But also just important to note that not only are they using that language, but they're also trying to insinuate that the slave trade, this involuntary relocation, was prior to the actual founding of the country, which it is not the case. And then again, just another thing is like this discomfort. It's like discomfort for whom? Like this is the same state that is legislating like anything to do with LGBT rhetoric out of the classroom. And yeah, it's discomfort for the exact people in power. So there's just so many levels of ridiculous here.
They're talking about, I'm glad you brought up the feeling discomfort, because again, that's what Florida was talking about when they're trying these changes in education. So again, this is the hierarchy of who they think matters in the country. Do you think they're concerned with who feels discomfort? Maybe the descendants of the folks that you called involuntarily relocated to this country. The descendants of those people, are they feeling uncomfortable when they go home and say, hey mom, here's my homework assignment. We're talking about involuntary relocation. And she goes, what the hell is this? This is ridiculous. Should she feel discomfort? And then when she goes to the school and says, hey, I'm a parent who wants to advocate for my child because you guys are giving parental rights and our influence over our child's education, do you know what they'll say to them? No, that has nothing to do with you. We're actually not talking about you. You're a second-class citizen. You see, because we're continuing that same thought process from that involuntary relocation energy that our ancestors put forward, and we're trying to continue that into now, so that you guys don't understand how our progression has gone from that to what we're doing today. Because they don't want people to be fighting back and actually have some kind of basis for their arguments and for their protests and for, honestly, they're advocating for their children's education to actually learn what happened. It's a complete rewriting of history.
Yeah, and I'm going to weigh in on this as well. The feeling discomfort, we're indisputably correct, because you could feel discomfort either way. So hey, don't teach about gay people because non-gay people are feeling discomfort. Well, when you tell people don't teach about the existence of gay people, gay students feel discomfort, gay parents feel discomfort. So are they allowed to then say, no, you're not allowed to teach about straight people? Like in health class, for example? Or you're not allowed to not teach about gay people? Whose discomfort are we talking about? How about in this particular case? You don't think that the descendants of those folks that, as JR said, you are claiming were involuntarily relocated might feel discomfort at you trying to sanitize slavery? No, they literally mean if white right-wingers feel discomfort, we get to veto anything we like. Otherwise, it makes no sense at all. Okay, can I say, well, you know what? I'm a parent in a school. I feel discomfort that they're teaching the Armenian genocide. Boom, veto, now they can't teach it. That's insane. How do I get the veto? Well, I felt discomfort, right? Can Germans say that's it, you're not allowed to teach about the Nazis? I feel discomfort. Can Nazis who are not German say, I feel discomfort that you're saying the Nazis are bad? Okay, now I gotta take it out of the classrooms and out of the textbooks. Can someone say, I feel discomfort that 2 + 2 = 4? You're not allowed to teach facts anymore if idiot right-wingers feel uncomfortable. Man, science is making, and by the way, this is very real, guys. You get to 2 + 2 = 4 and you think, oh, come on, right? No, they took out math books in Florida because they claimed it was talking about critical race theory. And then they found out later, oh, it just mentioned a black guy. Oh, come on. They're literally doing it. And on science, it's a disaster. Evolution is real, it's science. It's not debatable. And they're like, well, it makes me uncomfortable. I don't like that we are, with the other, that we're an animal. That makes me uncomfortable. I think I'm a celestial figure. So don't teach science.
I think they need a safe space.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with education, and it's all politics. And it's really sad because the people who will suffer the most are the kids who are subject to this curriculum. It's really, really, really a shame. And I believe it's the same state that in their textbooks referred to slaves as workers. So, or maybe that was Florida. I'm not actually sure. One of the two, but
yeah, no, Texas,
right, yeah.
Texas is making a real run at Florida. Let's note that for wackiest, craziest state. Last thing I'll end on. Guys, this is literal political correctness. Both the Soviets and the Nazis did political correctness. It's in the documents, it's tracked. And what they would say to their media and to their education officials, including their teachers, is do not teach things that are factually correct. Teach things that are politically correct. So if it's against the Nazi ideology or the Soviet ideology, do not teach it even if it's true. You must teach the things that we consider politically correct. So that is exactly what Republicans are doing in this country right now. Do not teach evolution. It is factually correct, but it is not politically correct. Do not teach slavery. It is factually correct, but not politically correct because it hurts our feelings. It makes us feel uncomfortable. This is madness.
Let's take this break, yeah?
Yeah, we got to take a break. All right, when we come back, good news for you guys. Not only fun stories that I promised you about Rudy and other right-wing clowns, but I'm going to show you exactly how politics works. That sounds pretty good, right? So come right back. All right, back on TYT, let's go to Super Chat. Chrissy F writes in, talking to my counselor, she mentioned as an MSW intern in Ohio with trigger law, if a client says they're going to get an abortion, I may have a duty to report of harm to another, the ripple effect. Yeah, no, look, there's gonna be 1,000 ripple effects of these insane laws where everybody has to spy in on each other. And if you are pregnant in America, you're now going to be terrorized. Where did you go? Did you travel through a red state? Were you ever in a red state? And look to see if they can track you down and imprison you. This is insanity, okay? Brought to you by lunatic right-wingers. Ghost Dragon says, wait, who needs a safe space? Yet it's totally progressives. Yeah, it's a great point. They're literally writing into the law in Texas, Florida, and other places. If you make us feel uncomfortable with your facts, we're gonna need a safe space of the public schools where you don't get to say uncomfortable facts. Everything they do is projection. Pitchfork's Dragon says, missing the whole show for work won't stop me from holding down the West Coast with a super chat. We need TYT primetime show, TYT Evening News 100. I like that you're still on the warpath. And guys, remember, if you're a member, you can catch the show anytime you want. TYT.com/join. If you're on YouTube, hit the join button below. Carol Stomberg, thank you for the super chat. We appreciate it. Michael Norris says the new Australian PM, Anthony Albanese, has already declared any American who comes to live in Australia will be protected from new laws from the US. We're now considered a state that has, totalitarian laws, and that other countries need to protect our citizens from our politicians. That's the state we're in. Ged Kuzak writes in, SCOTUS kills EPA. How can we focus on the long-term planet when short-term politics is so critical? Well, we can't, and things are in disastrous shape. I'm gonna run out of time here. So Axel the Ghost says, just say the right or lizard people and the zealot will listen real quick, LMAO. Yeah, we might have to lie to them to get them to pay attention. No, Republicans, lizard people. No, don't do that. TYT, Jen, Caroline, and JR with you guys, and also Grant McLean just joined by hitting the join button below on YouTube. We appreciate it. You guys help us do the show. And are you American heroes? I guess. I think so, for helping to bring truth to the country. All right, let's do the next story.
Cancel culture is a real thing. It is very real.
They want cancel culture. Our country wasn't built by cancel culture.
We have to protect our girls. It is discriminatory to force them to compete against biological males.
In your understanding, what does critical race theory mean? What is it?
All right, so this is the nonsense that you see daily, as if these are the most important issues in politics. Critical race theory, is it really being taught in math class in Florida? Answer is no, not remotely. Oh my God, trans girls going into high school track teams. Biggest issue in the world. No, it's all nonsense. What is it trying to cover up? What actually happens in politics? And that's what I'm going to tell you about in this story, okay? So something really important is happening in the Senate this week. Let me tell you. HuffPost reports Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell won't support a bipartisan domestic manufacturing bill if Democrats try to lower prescription drug prices and tax the rich, the Kentucky Republican announced on Thursday. So, while they're distracting you with squirrels about, critical race theory and cancel culture, Mitch McConnell is trying to make sure that you do not tax the rich, that the middle class pay almost all the taxes. And drug prices, which are literally killing you because of how high they are and you can't afford it, Mitch McConnell is making sure on behalf of the Republicans that your drug prices are higher. Those are things that actually affect your life. They affect your life tremendously. Unlike fictional things like critical race theory, which isn't even taught in high school. They have to distract you for what they're doing to you in Congress as we speak. Now, let me explain further what that means. They're gonna vote on two different bills, it looks like. One is a semiconductor bill, and McConnell's saying, I'm not gonna let you vote on that semiconductor bill if you dare to vote on the second bill, which is Build Back Better. So they're thinking of bringing that back. That has had all the different priorities that were also progressive priorities, lowering drug prices, child tax credit, paid family leave, all these things that massively affect your life. A lot of you were getting the child tax credit. It made a giant difference in your life and you hated that it went away, right? Well, McConnell's saying, not on my watch. Otherwise, you don't get to pass the semiconductor bill. Oh, okay. Well, what's in the semiconductor bill? It sounds kind of obscure, right? Well, here's what it is. The centerpiece of both the Senate and the House bills is $50 billion for a semiconductor incentive program and advanced microelectronics research. So it's $50 billion to a random industry. Who cares? That's a giveaway to giant multi-billion-dollar corporations. It's actually not even who cares, it's worse. You know whose money they're taking? They're taking our money. You and I are paying taxes, and then they're giving it to the richest companies in the world. Ooh, are you holding that one hostage, Mitch McConnell? But for Democrats, they're like, oh, that's our donors, that's our donors. No, Mitch, we'll do anything, I swear we won't help the American people. This is the sixth state of actual politics in America. So let me give you more details. So, by the way, is Mitch McConnell being serious? No, he's obviously bluffing. Why? Listen to this. The Senate passed this version of the semiconductor bill by a vote of 68 to 32, with 18 Republicans in support, including McConnell. It's not clear if the 17 other Republicans who voted yes would join McConnell in changing their positions. No, they're not gonna change their positions. You know why? They have the same donors. The semiconductors guys bribed the Democrats, they bribed the Republicans. Why do you think the Republicans voted for it? They never vote for any Democratic bill, because it's not a Democratic bill. It's a Republican bill, totally brought to you by giant corporations, meant to rob us, okay? So McConnell's like, oh yeah, I won't let you help my donors. Of course you're gonna let them help their donors, your donors. It's absurd, it's a total bluff. So is it really true that Build Back Better is coming back? Well, let's go to that. The centerpiece of the legislation would be a provision giving Medicare, that's the Build Back Better, giving Medicare more power to negotiate with pharmaceutical manufacturers for lower prescription drug prices. Well, that sounds great, and I'm 1 billion% in favor of that. Are the Democrats really gonna do that? Well, let's keep going. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and Senator Joe Manchin have nearly finalized a prescription drug agreement, according to a source familiar with the negotiations. Really, have they? But prescription drugs would be just part of the bill. The other major components under consideration would address climate change, that sounds good, and partially undo tax cuts for the wealthy that Republicans enacted in 2017. It sounds really good. Democrats have dropped a number of social policies in Build Back Better that Manchin opposed. That sounds really bad. Okay, so look, they dropped all the things that would help you. Paid family leave, child tax credit, I can go on and on. But even the couple of bare bones ones sound pretty good that still remain, because the bill had a lot of good stuff in it. So now here come the catches. First of all, are they really gonna do anything on climate change? No. Another report indicated that they're now rewriting it so that it doesn't really help with climate change. Instead, it helps the oil companies and the coal companies, including the ones that Manchin owns. Everything in politics is a lie, okay? You have to sift through all of this to find out what the reality is. And then are they really gonna increase taxes on the rich in Washington, really? Well, let's go to the last sentence. The tax piece will be difficult for Democrats, since they need all 50 members of their caucus to agree, and Senator Krista Sinema has said that she won't support higher tax rates. It's a shell game. Oh, Manchin wants to raise taxes on the rich. Oh, but Sinema doesn't, golly gee. Oh, Manchin wants to lower drug prices, but Sinema doesn't. Sinema wants action on climate, but Manchin doesn't. Oh, well, I guess there's nothing we can do. Oh, and McConnell threatened the semiconductor bill that is so important to the American people. So we will do none of it. That's the games that they play. Mainstream media reporters never tell you about any of that, and they allow them to lie to you and to distract you at the same time.
I feel like even when it comes to things, you mentioned how the media will allow them to do this. I think a significant percentage of the media actually doesn't even get it either, because they're too busy wrapped up in the process. Oh, I reported that, they said, okay, I gotta move on to the next. Oh, I gotta keep my access, let me make sure I say what they said, because I trust my smart politician, congressman, senator who just told me that's what's happening. And it goes on and on and on. I think we give a little bit too much credit to their intelligence and how much they're part of the process. They are part of the process, but they've just been duped into they're just another cog in this system. So another part about this I do want to point out, because Cenk is telling you guys that this is how politics works. And Cenk is a talk show host. He's not a politician. Oh yeah, what are you guys talking about? Cenk just over here is ranting and raving because he just wants to demonize these folks that are trying to do something for the American people. Here's a politician. He works with politicians. His name is Brendan Buck. I go back to this article probably once every 2 weeks. This was back in the beginning of this year, and he was talking about how the approach that Republicans are supposed to have in the midterm elections is the beginning of this year. And he was talking about how Republicans don't need to present any kind of agenda or strategy because their voters just don't care. Don't believe me? How about we read this quote? He goes, "The probably the right move for Republicans. I don't think you need to present yourself as the focus of this election." On top of that, he also said that the GOP electorate had changed to focus more on culture wars and quote, fighting wokeism rather than on whether their elected leaders would deliver policy victories. He went on, "I don't know that Republican voters care too much about policy as they used to. It's much more of a cultural fight that they're waging, and that's really what motivates people." It's almost like they understand how the people that they've appealed to are thinking, and they want to keep them in this cycle of, oh, I'm so mad about this, I'm so mad about that. Culture wars, wokeism. Jake brought up all those things we were talking about, oh, the trans swimmer, and oh my God, can you believe inflation? When actually anytime someone talks about inflation or talks about food shortages or baby formula shortages, and those things try to get addressed, they block them. Republicans need problems happening within our country for two reasons. So they can claim that the other party's doing it, and that also people can continue to struggle at such a high rate that they don't have enough time to think about what their politicians are doing right in front of them. And it works over and over and over again.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. And circling back to how you started, JR, talking about how the media frames this, like they are doing, the mainstream media is doing such a disservice to all of us. Because even as I was looking into this story, I saw reporter after reporter refer to this semiconductor bill as like a national security bill. And so I was so confused as to why Mitch McConnell would be so ready to just to hold this national security bill hostage to try and block a bill that he doesn't like with the budget reconciliation. And so I think it's really important that we go through these processes of like really breaking down who is benefiting financially from these bills. Cause like, even as like, I consider myself pretty media literate, and I just kept seeing again and again centrist reporters saying like, no, McConnell's bill is very important for national security, for all of these different things. And then, yeah, just to see him holding it hostage for something that Republicans ostensibly care a lot about, national security, and just being so willing to scrap his support of these other things, like, was so confusing to me. So that clears up a lot of things on my end. And again, it's just, I don't know how the two of you feel about like, McConnell is just he's just such a fighter, and it's almost like he doesn't even do things for political expediency. Like he really is just focusing on maintaining his own power and absolutely doesn't care about the quite literally millions of Republicans who also suffer from exorbitant drug costs and who suffer from the effects of climate change. And it's insane watching the Republican Party drum up this support for different rights of like the working people, the non-elites, but then fail to deliver for them time and time and time again. And again, it's really frustrating to be on the left and just see us being hostage to this type of like truly like just abhorrent political situation where it seems like we have nothing to do. And again, the centrist mainstream media isn't doing any favors in propping up certain Republican-led bills as certain things that they're just fundamentally not.
Yeah, so listen, one last thing from me. I don't want you to get what I'm saying wrong. So is it important for us to have semiconductor manufacturing within the US? Well, for a number of reasons it is, otherwise we're too reliant on China, et cetera. Would this bill create more investment in the country and create some more jobs? Yes, it would. So those are positive things. But those are things that they have to convince us of, the American people, because we're going to pay $50 billion to incredibly profitable companies that already make billions of dollars. The onus is on them to say, hey guys, even though it looks like they're spectacularly profitable, we should take your hard-earned money and give it to them because these are really important issues that might even be national security issues. But we're not having that conversation at all. Instead, McConnell is saying, and this is important, goes to Caroline's point. I hate McConnell, but I respect him. McConnell, who is definitely gonna pass that bill, is saying, well, I might not pass it if you dare to help the American people with any other bill. So what are the Democrats supposed to do? Hey, idiots of idiots, you're supposed to fight back. So this is what if I was a Democrat, it's so easy. I'd be like, wait, this semiconductor bill, McConnell wants to kill it. He just said he wants to kill it if we do Build Back Better. Well, okay, then if we have a national security issue with China, it is 100% Mitch McConnell's fault. We were gonna put a facility in Ohio, could just cost 12,000 jobs. 100% Mitch McConnell's fault. What is wrong with you? Why don't you do the most basic things in politics? And by the way, McConnell says, unless we make sure there's higher drug prices. Well, then why don't you put them on the spot, you morons? Why don't you put up a bill that says, here's lower drug prices? Go ahead, vote no. Vote no, McConnell. I want every Republican voting no. But that one, as with most of these things, I tell them that they're stupid because they don't do the most obvious things in the world. But really, a lot of you make this point, and it's a really good one. It's one I've made for 20 years. They're not really stupid. They do stupid things. But the reason that they do them is because they're corrupt. Because Schumer and Biden also want to give the $50 billion to their donors. And they don't want to lower drug prices because they also get money from pharmaceutical companies, just like Mitch McConnell does. They're lying. That is why we have this whole game. That's why you have the squirrels and the distractions. And that's why you have this fake bluffing by McConnell so Schumer and Biden can go, oh my God, Mitch McConnell twisted my arm. Now I cannot lower drug prices. Oh, I cannot tax the rich at all. Donors, you guys thrilled. They're like, yes, way to go, Biden and Schumer. And the press is like, huh, what? What? Huh?
Cenk, if you keep bashing Biden and Schumer, we're gonna end up with Republicans in power. Then Republicans will start getting the things that they want.
Which is exactly where we are today. Does it look like the Democrats are in charge? It looks like the Republicans are getting everything they want. And that's because they are.
Yeah, and it's like the thing that's so scary about McConnell's threats versus the Democrats' threats is like he follows through on his threats. And we've been in this position since Roe versus Wade falling, where we keep seeing all of these like bombastic statements from left leaders, and it's like, does anyone believe them anymore? The threats they're making. So yeah, it's evil, but it's compelling, and it gets their base riled up, and then they're just on to the next squirrel issue or whatever.
Yep. All right, we got to take a break, guys. So when we come back, finally the funny stories. Okay, we'll be back. Squirrel. All right, back on TYT. Let's go to Twitch first. Venus Voldaren gifted 10 subs and gave 1,000 bits. Thank you, really appreciate that. Felicity91 said, JR and Caroline, OMG. Okay, you guys get an OMG, that's cool. Frank Morningtree gave 1,000 bits and this comment. What will it take for us to end the madness that has gripped so much of the population? When is enough enough? So that's a great question, and there is an answer to it. We need a progressive to get enough of a national spotlight, for example, winning the presidency, to be able to affect the national conversation. Because the current Democratic leadership couldn't make a case for the left if their life depended on it. They don't want to, even if they did, they're both corrupt and stupid, and they'd be like, how would we make our own case? I don't understand, right? They have no chance, no chance. And so, but if someone with a bully pulpit like the president came in day after day after day and made our case, then we could affect the national conversation, because one of the things that would happen is Fox News would be like, can you believe that the president said that they don't teach critical race theory in math? Well, we have no examples of it, but maybe they do, right? And then you're like, oh, so they don't teach it. Can you believe the president wants higher wages? $15 minimum wage. Oh, yeah, that sounds pretty good, right? Can you believe the president says you should all get health care? People are like, yeah, that sounds pretty good, right? But instead the Democrats are like, no. Universal health care, Medicare for all, we hate it. We hate it just as much as Sean Hannity does. Well, screw you. That's destroying the country. You're never gonna get sanity to Republicans unless you get a progressive who has the national spotlight and can talk sense to them. And you're never gonna get credibility. They're never gonna believe you if you're a lying politician and you keep telling them, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this. They believe me. No, I represent the donors. You have to be honest. You have to say things like, yes, the other Democrats are also corrupt when they take the drug company money and the oil company money and the banker money. So you're never gonna get a regular Democrat to do that. If you vote for Democratic incumbents or regular Democrats in any primary, including in a presidential primary, you ought to have your head examined. You're definitely voting for a Republican. If you don't vote for a progressive within Democratic primaries, they're just the same as Republicans on economic issues. And now, by the way, on everything. They don't even help us on voting rights, women's rights, any rights. They're no different than Republicans. Buttigieg, Klobuchar. Get out of here, man. 100% Republicans. Don't listen to the media. MSNBC is poison. All right, we'll be back. Squirrel. Back on TYT, Cenk, JR, and Caroline with you guys. We do have last couple of stories to get to, but I gotta read these two comments. Rizel writes in from the member section. I've been a member of TYT since 2006, and this week has made me more depressed than any before now. I know it's totally true, you're not wrong, but hang in there. Yes, we have a plan for 2024, yes. So you've got to have hope all the way through 2024. It'll be disastrous if you don't, okay? And then lastly, Meg has a good point. Republicans love a government small enough to fit inside a uterus. So, facts. All right, JR's got the next.
Let's go. It's been a bit of a rough week for the Giulianis. At first, Rudy damn near gets killed from a pat on the back. And Andrew then loses his gubernatorial primary campaign in New York. Of course, so when things are going this badly for an entire family, nothing really soothes that kind of soul like a brand new grift. Rudy steps in for that. Let's check out what he tweeted just early this week. This is great. Rudy says, great products at reasonable, man, I can't believe that's what he actually wrote. Great products at reasonable prices. Use code Rudy for additional savings. And as you can see, there's new sandals. They've got like 8 different colors. The regular price is $79.98, but you can get yours for $50 as long as you write Rudy into the promo code. Either way it goes, that's also at mypillow.com. Unsurprising, absolutely. So yes, he's pushing these brand new sandals, and they're under Mike Lindell's ceiling, I suppose. So number one, he's hawking these things. He's a former mayor of New York during 9/11. Don't forget, this guy's fallen so far. And number two, he and Lindell are apparently late to this game. I looked at this article from the Today Show that talked about this from before, a year ago. This is what they wrote. The 78-year-old Giuliani's personal discount code, I'm sorry, no, this points this out, I'm sorry. The 78-year-old Giuliani's personal discount code brings down the price of the sandals from that $80 to $50. Still a price hike from the $29.95 tag that the viral pillow slides appear to be a riff on. Pillow slides are a real thing that happened a year ago. Again, this is from the Today Show article though, they talked about those. Pillowy athletic slides have taken a step out of the locker room and into the wardrobes of celebs like Kendall Jenner, Hailey Bieber, and Bella Hadid, who have all been spotted wearing luxury versions of the comfortable shoes. And on TikTok, we've seen videos featuring similar styles that have racked up millions of views on the app. Again, that's from last year, but now Rudy and Mike Pillow are now trying to push them there. So even though these things are seriously overpriced, there's a bit of a more to this that Rudy wants to get into. So here we go. There's more on this from the Washington Post. Trump has also instructed his aides. This is why Rudy's looking for so much more cash with these side hustles. Trump has instructed aides not to pay Giuliani's legal fees, two officials said, and has demanded that he personally approve any reimbursements for the expenses Giuliani incurred while traveling on the president's behalf to challenge election results in key states. They said Trump has privately expressed concern with some of Giuliani's moves and did not appreciate a demand from Giuliani for $20,000 a day in fees for his work attempting to overturn the election. Okay, that's also from early last year when he said, "I'm not going to be giving you any more money, Rudy." So Rudy has to do things like this, and he also has to do the every time he has to talk about someone, they give him a script and he reads it out, and he charges $55 to $60. Cameos. He's trying anything that he can, but don't get it twisted. This is his promo code for the sandals, but he's been hawking My Pillow stuff for a while. Watch this.
I've been sleeping on My Pillows for some time. I love them. They're simply the very best pillows ever made. But I just found out that they also have a wide assortment of other incredible products like their mattress topper, sheets, towels, and slippers, and more.
Let's jump down to graphic number 7 because this flew under my radar as well. By the way, he's been hawking those things. Let's jump down to graphic 7 here because he's also been hawking things like this. This was put out by a couple of folks on Twitter. Rudy Giuliani is selling autographed 9/11 shirts for $911. These shirts, and someone retweeted that and pointed out, and it says 9 and 11 on both sides of an image. I can't fully tell of rubble or the American flag in the background of things that are going on. The shirts were being sold on the website of WABC Radio, where Mr. Giuliani, at the time was 77, regularly hosts this program. Description of the page of the autographed shirts states that, quote, Rudy Giuliani will personally autograph the 9/11 t-shirt and that a portion of the proceeds go to the ABC Radio Foundation, a 501c3 charity. Yet the page doesn't say what that portion is. Maybe it's about 5 to 10 cents.
Yeah, all right. Look, man, it started funny, right? Poor guys slanging sandals. And so I'm gonna read you one more graphic here to give you a sense of how much of an ass Donald Trump is. The House Select Committee investigating the January 6th Capitol attack appeared to make the case at its second hearing that Donald Trump and his campaign engaged in potential fundraising fraud, raising $250 million for a Trump, quote, election defense fund that did not actually exist. But the money actually does exist, and Trump can give it to any legal defense. Rudy was his top lawyer. He clearly needs legal defense. That's why he's like, please buy Mike sandals. Please, I'm begging you. Okay, we got a discount. And Trump's like, I don't care. I don't care that you delivered for me. I don't care that you humiliated yourself for me. I'm not gonna give you a dime of the $250 million that I raised from suckers who believed in me for my legal defense or your legal defense. I'm gonna keep all of it. You're gonna get none of it. Loyalty to Donald Trump never, ever pays. It always winds up with you humiliating yourself, rubbing pillows and sandals all over your face for Mike Lindell. And by the way, to quote OJ, I would never wear those ugly ass shoes.
It's trendy though.
Yeah, Rudy Giuliani is like America's just degenerate cousin that like had so much promise and then just really, really has been knocked down a lot of pegs. And it's like, yeah, how many times has this man just humiliated himself for Donald Trump? And it knows no bounds. Like I think that he needs to go further down this route of like mid-level marketing scheme type things. Like we need the hairspray, we need that like hair lotion, whatever that was like dripping down his face that day. I think he could really build a brand around this. The Four Seasons landscaping, like I think the sandals and the Four Seasons landscaping, we could do something around there. But yeah, I mean $50 for these sandals too. And I am very curious who the like Gen Z person on the MyPillow team was who introduced Mike Lindell and Rudy Giuliani to like Yeezy sandals. There's something there. There's something there. But this, I mean, he's just the awful gift that keeps on giving, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, by the way, cheap plastic sandals for $50, and that's a discount. I don't think so. Right, but they found a way to turn a funny story into disaster. I didn't know about those 9/11 shirts. Are the pictures of dead people included in the shirt? And you're selling them for $911 dollars, you monsters? Okay, and that also is how disgusting Rudy Giuliani is. All right, we got time for one quick fun story.
Yeah, let's jump in this other fun story. Here you go. There's a viral TikTok that's going around. People like to see engagements. It's nice and fun. You know, people, it's the wedding season. This particular proposal went horribly wrong though, because as the man tried to make it all surprising and beautiful and perfect for his woman, he lost the ring into the lake. Let's watch how this happened.
Sorry, guys. The lost ring story without telling you, the producers. So if you guys can grab that video, I was trying to text the producers because that's the time we have. So let's see if we can go to that.
Okay.
Yeah. That wasn't what it was.
Oh no, sometimes you have to laugh when you're about to cry. Really fast, the details of what happened there. You heard the dunk, dunk, dunk around of that ring hitting the deck. The couple whose names are listed on their TikTok profiles as Jerry Ashford and Ross Bamber have both posted about this event, saying that it was going to be a quote, perfect proposal until Bamber dropped the ring into the lake. In a radio interview, Bamber said, I watched it as it was bouncing along the decking and I saw it hit the edge of one of the decking boards and I thought, wow. And then it literally plopped in. Some of these commenters were amused by the whole thing, joking about whether or not the ring actually fell into the water. They're trying to do this prank moment. Others were like, well, that probably costs a lot. This is gonna be a problem for you. And also maybe it's a sign you shouldn't get married. But he did point out that the ring cost around $1,200, and this is no joke, because he just drops his cash into the lake there. More on this, because one comment with 43 likes was skeptical about whether the video was legitimate, asking whether he was playing a prank on her by pretending to drop the ring into the lake. He says, I wish it was a prank, it was an expensive engagement. But the couple also said that friends tried to help them find it by snorkeling, diving for it, looking as all they could, but they were unable to see it. Let's check that out. As we go along here, we can also speak over this as well. They dove in trying to help her out, or them out. And I mean, look, it's not as deep as I thought it was, maybe just at that particular point. But I think you should probably give it up. I'm not sure if they're gonna find that.
I don't know, man. It feels, if it's not that deep, I think I could find it. Okay.
$1,200 in the bottom of the little lake.
And the guy thought about getting scuba gear. That's gonna cost more than the ring. That doesn't make any sense. $1,200 for the ring. All right, Caroline, would you be impressed by that kind of proposal or the opposite?
My first question would be, what type of insurance policy do you have on the ring? And if the answer is none, then I think we need a couple months to rethink the engagement thing. But you know, it's not over.
Caroline, you're not alone. You know, he had to redo the ceremony. Okay, not in the same way. They got a new ring.
Thank God. Okay.
Then she said yes. So
okay, good.
Apparently that night we didn't get to her yes.
I have a good idea. People should propose on ground in normal situations, maybe in the house, maybe at a restaurant.
Yeah, maybe not on TikTok too, but I don't know.
So that's him doing it again now with the new ring. But like even then they're playing around with it too much.
Why do
it?
No. Obviously he's Butterfingers, so why would you do that again? No.
He's like, no, I got this. All right, just keep it to like, be romantic, but don't now bounds of reason. I was worried he's gonna knock the candle over and light the place on fire. Anyways, all right, bonus episode where we have more interesting stories, including a guy who took a ton of money from his company and ran. TYT.com/join, right or wrong, we're gonna ask you in the poll. Come join us there.
You know, old school's pitched to me from Jank. It'll just be me, you, Jesus, Ben, and maybe Michael. And we're like, okay, cool. I can do that every week. As you can see, me, Jesus, Ben.
When you make the order, it says, don't exceed $20.01. So I'll just order literally anything to get it as close to that as I possibly can.
I'm sorry that I ordered $45 worth of food and got an email saying, sir, would you like to rethink that? What are you talking about?
I was in hell. I was just like, oh my God, the theater's empty, nobody's here. Everyone on screen keeps fucking cursing. Why did I let this happen? And the whole thing looks like it was shot through a glass of milk. My mom's gonna be so mad.
If you're looking for a heart attack, the short way, baby.
Wrong. I did put mayonnaise on it. I'm the most in shape, overweight person you'll find.
That's right.
He was like, why didn't you answer my call? I called you 39 times.
Yuck. But what makes you stop right before 40? What makes you say, nah, man, I ain't doing that no more. I'm cool.
And I called you back on the air. And I was like, okay, Kevin Smith, big shot. What the you said you'd come on and you didn't come on.
I'm sure I took that very well.
Yeah, you did. You called me back the next day and said, I thought it was 7 a.m. And there's now deep fake porn. I don't know if you guys have heard of this.
Heard of it?